Well, welcome to the Raincoin Roundtable, and we're going to kick it off over here on the left with Gabe.
I'm Gabe. I'm the organizer of the Tampa Bay Bitcoineers meetup group. And I do Bitcoin stuff.
And you also have a company, Clearvoter.
Yes, Clearvoter is a political action network where we're looking to introduce blockchain-based voting systems.
So I'm Joe Blankenship. I'm a blockchain researcher and data scientist.
You might have to use your big boy voice.
Sorry.
your 8 foot tall voice.
Well, I mean, so name's Joe Blankenship, blockchain researcher, data scientist. My research is in the geographic aspects of human-machine spaces, looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum as case studies.
My name's Anthony Paglino. I'm the founder of Raincube, background in economics. I used to mow my dad's lawn, and I actually, my first entrepreneurial experience was selling omelets in China to Chinese tourists. But yeah, I've been interested in how do we create more value sustainably and getting off of the centralized money supply. So I'm really excited to be talking about my passion with other talented, knowledgeable people who also want to see something like this come to fruition.
I'm Kelly Carson. I'm the Director of Finance with the Blockchain Education Network, and I got my degree at USF in Computational and Applied Mathematics.
Oh, it's me. My name is Patrick McGuire. I am the president at Fifth Web LLC, and we are a strategy, marketing, and community development firm who service a few different companies in the blockchain space.
My name's Chris Williams. I'm a blockchain consultant. I work on, right now, mostly Hyperledger Fabric, but I've also worked on open transactions and Ethereum, and I'm mostly focused on building business solutions right now, so business blockchains.
So Gabe, I want to ask you, what's your first impression of Raincoin, coming from the Bitcoin background?
I think it's an interesting concept, being able to commoditize water in a completely new way that we haven't had before, which is great, and I think it could bring a lot of opportunity to a lot of places that are have less means of working with water and using it in a really effective and efficient way. So I'm really excited about what you're doing with Raincube, and I hope we can kind of bat some ideas around on how to institute Raincoin in the best way possible.
Yeah. Now, Joe, I know you wrote a very, it wasn't too long. You kept it under 200 pages, but in that document, you've outlined, how to transfer an asset and turn that into a blockchain asset. So, kind of give us just a high-level overview of, some of the technicalities of instituting a blockchain asset.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's going to take me a little bit of effort to convert it into a very short answer.
Well, yeah, and you can also, and I may have not gotten it 100% accurate, but if you just wanted to describe the thesis that you wrote.
Well, I mean, I want to try and keep it as Raincube centric as possible. But I think building up what Gabe talked about, we have to ask, what inside the system is actually the commodity that we're looking at. Are we looking at water as a commodity, or are we looking at the people using the infrastructure as a commodity type of relationship? Is it, are we trying to, it's nice to collect water, but the water has to both, in this system, has to be used in terms of a centralized focus of the token, but not the token itself, because it's part of the natural commons, it's part of the natural ecosystem. So anytime you take a natural resource out of an ecosystem, there's an impact on the surrounding ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So you want to find a happy balance in saying, well, we want to tokenize a relationship inside the system, and there might be a commodity relationship tied to that. But in terms of trying to convert that commodity into a token, there's quite a bit of stuff that goes on in between it. I mean, there's determining what kind of values are associated with that, exactly what kind of the exchange relationships that you're going to be tied to that type of value, and ultimately how it's going to manifest inside of a currency of some sort. And now a lot of that depends on the social aspects of it. What social circles, what cultures, what politics, what economies these things are being implemented into. How is the system implemented here going to differ from Scandinavia or from sub-Saharan Africa? Places with different rainfall patterns, places where they found their own unique cultural to natural implementations of how they use and manifest and regulate water usage. So the token's also going to account for those kind of unique instances, how that actually scales from just rain harvesting to the global internet of rain.
Yeah. Well, what's nice about water is 1 liter is 1 liter.
Yes, 1 liter is 1 liter quantitatively, but qualitatively, there's a mixed methodological
Right.
aspect to. In a desert, 1 liter water is worth way more than, say, Central Florida.
Correct. Well, I think just having a very simple use case. You collect the water. Let's say 1 rain coin goes into escrow, and that it's waiting to get minted the moment that you turn on that shower and you use that 1 liter of water, and then that 1 liter of water flows out into a gray water system into your backyard banana patch. So I guess the question would be, how does that 1 rain coin get minted from a technical perspective? Like, let's say we want to put that onto a blockchain. What would be some of the steps that we want to take?
Oh, it depends on your consensus mechanism and the infrastructure you're trying to use to put it on there. But I think that's what still has to be nailed out. The technological aspect depends on the philosophical structure that you're putting into it.
Okay.
And so with Bitcoin was simple. People just wanted a cryptocurrency, and proof of work was a consistent mechanism they used to perpetuate the production of cryptocurrency. Raincube is way more elevated than that. That's easily a blockchain 3.0 technology. Ethereum relatively being considered Ethereum or blockchain 2.0. You have to move beyond this idea of just purely monetary production system underneath a higher level functionality. For Ethereum, you still have Ether as the underlying cryptocurrency that's being produced that supports the smart contract language Solidity at the top of it. With Raincube, there's an additional layer of, we're tying into the natural world, human world, and then digitizing both those relationships into a token value. It's a much more complex relationship than just, say, producing cryptocurrency and then tying that to a buyer-seller relationship, whether that's either a cryptocurrency transaction or a smart contract or even a DAO.
Right. Chris, you've worked with both Solidity and Ethereum as well as Hyperledger Fabric. From that experience, if you were to start developing a Raincoin application, where would you start?
Well, you're trying to invite the world, so you're going to want a public blockchain.
Well, let's just start with the neighborhood. Let's say we have 10 homes on a micro transactive grid.
Right.
And the only place where you can exchange Raincoin is within your watershed. So let's say that I've been growing peppers and my neighbor's been growing tomatoes. How do you use Raincoin to facilitate a trade between the two?
Yeah. So I still think you want a public blockchain, something that has the potential to invite everyone. And you're certainly going to want to create a coin. Maybe the easiest way to do it is with a smart contract. Just to say, this is a new coin and this is the way it behaves. It behaves like a very standard coin. There's no special functionality, and it can be traded between people that are on this public blockchain. So that's probably the easy part. The hard part is how do you build a business around it? How do you build up the network and the platform for consuming it and trading it? And what's the underlying story? And so we know the underlying story is sustainability. You're trying to, in a lot of ways, incentivize becoming more resilient or sustainable or natural, maybe. It just has some ideas. And so the thing that kind of I'm stuck on is I don't know if you can if you can fully incentivize people to behave that way. You can just encourage them slightly. You can say, if you were going to garden, we can help you garden smarter or better, or we can reward you in a way for gardening. And I think people buy into that. If you're already into gardening, you want to do it well. So in a sense, the coin is going to support a marketplace that you're going to create. And it's not just for peppers. It's going to be for hardware. You're already doing that with the Raincube itself. But
Well, and here's the dilemma that I come into is because you wouldn't necessarily want to use Raincoin to purchase hardware.
10%?
Well, let's just say if it takes $1,000 upfront fixed cost to buy all of the hardware plus the installation. Then after that, you're creating Raincoin, you're growing food, and that is then establishing kind of that secondary economy for goods and services for either somebody to come and plant the seeds or somebody to come and harvest the produce. So everything after that fixed cost, once that $1,000 has been sunk into the system, everything else after that is the complementary currency. So if that one pepper costs one Raincoin, then you could use your Raincoins to, purchase different produce depending on what the water requirement would be.
Right.
And then we were discussing, once that Raincoin has been used, what happens to it? So it either gets evaporated or dissipated or composted, because you're always going to have new Raincoins being minted as you're consuming that water in the garden.
So how does that work? Is it built into the asset where it says every year I'm going to lose 1% of my value to evaporation? Something like that.
Well, I think the contract is once the sale is made, and I wouldn't even call it a sale, because what I want to instill into Raincoin is this idea of gift giving, right? Because if you're selling things for profit, or I think what happens naturally when you have a garden, and let's say you have the tomato crop come in, there's more tomatoes than you can do with. So what you often end up doing is, because you have that surplus, you're giving it away.
Sure.
So I guess the idea being, well, instead of paying for food, what if you were incentivized to give the food away? So that's, but then again, how do you deal with a surplus? So maybe there is a floating exchange rate, depending on if you're in the dry season or the wet season.
And it's always troubling to try to incentivize gift giving, in a sense that, like, people give gifts for another reason,
Right.
not for monetary value.
Well, in traditional cultures, the reason why you gave a gift was in the future you may need to have a gift given to you.
Totally.
So it's not completely altruistic, but
So I'm totally good with the second order effects of Raincoin becoming a thing, and a lot of people consuming it, and eventually people value it all by itself to where they can buy food or whatever with it. But I think that first network effect, or the first people that'll join the network, are going to be incentivized for another reason. Raincoin won't have been proven yet. And so there'll be this question of, well, what can I the person on the street saying, why did you buy Raincoin? How do you know it's worth something? Their very quick response is going to have to be something like, I can buy these things with it that help me with my gardening or something like that. I can extend my Raincube, in some way. And at the very least, the Raincoin company will buy it back from me for something. That, there's always a backstop or something like that. And then, I think people would accept the idea of it evaporating a little bit. You have a problem with the sense that it's always going to rain. And so your money supply is always going to grow. And
well, yeah, I think the money supply, the Raincoin supply would be dependent on how much storage capacity is available. So even though it's going to continue to rain, if that rain falls onto a parking lot and it goes into the sewer and out to the bay, does that count? Whereas if we actually have a storage tank that collects it and then uses it, eventually working to a point where we have enough storage capacity to meet whatever demand for personal consumption. And there could be an alternate rainwater system. Well, okay. Well, let's take a look at the building that we're in right now. This is a massive. Well, it's a large space. The amount of water that falls on the roof here, even though there's nobody living here, they would have excess. So is there an incentive for them to potentially sell their excess water that they collect here to a residential house where there's a higher demand? Now, would they get Raincoin, and maybe they could use Raincoin to pay their food vendor or their beverage vendor instead of having some national vending company shipping products around the world? It's a local economy that you're buying. You're buying your produce from a local backyard.
Right. Well, it could become, like Bitcoin at this point, it has value because we can quote an exchange rate to
Right.
anybody. We can tell anybody it costs $1,600 for Bitcoin, and they'll freak out because not only will they realize it has value, it has a lot of value. So you could say Raincoin will have that one day to where people just exchange it for all the things. I just wonder, how do you get there? What are the first few trades you have to be willing to make to tell them this has value and it's going to continue to have value, so you can value it for different things? I don't have to be your whole marketplace.
Right.
But I do wonder if part of your story that you're trying to tell is sustainability is a top priority going forward. Humans need to live more sustainably. And if so, are you issuing more than a coin? You're issuing solutions, not just a Raincube, but other ways to use water intelligently, and all the things that could manifest as.
Going back to the example of the shower, let's say, why take, right, so how do you accurately value that? If everything costs zero, then how do we keep a balanced supply? So the underlying background behind Raincoin is that it represents the physical rainwater. If it's, if it's a glass of water, or if it's a bunch of bananas, or if it's, a jar of pickles, like there is a water requirement. So that water requirement would be accurately reflected by how much Raincoin it costs. So for example, almonds are water intensive. So almonds would be very expensive on the Raincoin chart, whereas some lettuce grown in a hydroponic factory would be next to nothing. So let's say you have a big roof and a big yard, you're making a lot of Raincoin. But what happens if you don't own a home? Could you go and work for a day in somebody's garden as a harvester, earn some Raincoin, and then use that to meet your daily food requirement or water requirement?
Right, yeah, and time banks were one of the original use cases for complementary currencies, and I think that fits extremely well. There's already, community gardens are essentially already backed by volunteer labor anyway, so it makes sense that the volunteers have this asset that they can redeem for surplus at a later date. But is that also a problem? Is that a problem?
I think you're like I said, these are all great ideas, but you're really overstretching the core concept of Raincoin and Raincube.
Okay.
Like I said, you need to keep it simple. Bitcoin is extremely valuable and has persisted the longest out of most cryptocurrencies because it's simple. It's just a coin. That's it. So for Raincube to stay sustainable in terms of Raincoin, just keep Raincoin in terms of single focus, water sustainability. Because right here, inside you're quantifying sustainability inside this paper. You have 5 main variables that you initially point out: sustainability, efficiency, resilience, diversity, and interconnectivity. And I assume inter is also incorporating intra-connectivity as well. Because there's micro and macro scalar connections within the actual Raincube network.
You mean like on the community level and on the global level?
Yeah, because each scale of economy has different considerations in terms of connectivity. The local community is far different than going to the global IOR. But each one has to stay connected and relational to each other in order to maintain the core concept of water sustainability. So just by focusing on that, like I said, I think the initial challenge is kind of deciding what you want the Raincube to encapsulate in terms of a token value, and what you want to have as a sidechain functionality on the sides of proof of flow.
Right.
Because produce is one of those other economic functionalities and exchanges. Those can be built around it, but if you want to keep Raincoin focused on water sustainability issues, then you need to build a token to do just that.
One idea that we've kicked around is this idea of an investment pool where, let's say you purchase the Raincube kit for $1,000, and then that now gives you 1,000 liters worth of flow capacity. Let's say for a year there is 100 people playing. Everybody had the same $1,000 buy-in. Well, let's just say 1,000 people, so we have like an even $1 million. So let's say that there was a 25% profit margin. So we have $250,000 that then can be redistributed to the individuals who produce the most flow. Now that, I don't think, that could be a nice model to expand the physical infrastructure of Raincube, because if you're paying $1,000, but if you use it wisely, you can get $2,000 back at the end of the year when it comes time to harvest. So there are, unfortunately, we're at a point now where we have a working prototype, but we've gotten it so that the Internet of Things prototype is working. Now we're waiting to scale that to the community level, because once we have 2 people in a neighborhood who are on Raincube, and each neighbor can see, oh, well, you have that much water, I have this much water. You're growing, you have a peach tree and I have an apple tree. I've watered my apple tree twice as much as you watered your peach tree. Could we exchange? I trade you, 1 apple for 2 peaches. But then again, you're saying bringing produce is going to complicate it even further, to a point where.
Well, it's a different economy. I mean, water is one economic system. Produce uses the water, but it also has other variables that go into actually producing a functioning economy for produce, as opposed to the utility that's just.
Isn't there subsidies for rainwater storage capacity in was it Arizona, the example?
Yeah, no, there's cities in the US and around the world that will subsidize, but these are not internet connected devices. They're just dumb storage systems, which, why we could just stop at IoT, internet connectedness. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have, right now we're running our IoT prototypes using Amazon Web Services, and that makes sense to continue with that. The idea being, once Ethereum gets more stabilized, it may become more cost effective to be running a decentralized application as opposed to a centralized application. Chris, how far away do you think we are from Ethereum being able to challenge AWS in terms of offering a better, cheaper service?
It's already available. You can use Microsoft's Azure as a cloud service, and they offer blockchains as a service, and they're using Ethereum behind the scenes. They're also on the committee for enterprise Ethereum, and that just makes sense. They've chosen Ethereum as their blockchain, so you could be building it today.
But are you talking about building your own decentralized compute?
So yeah, because every Raincube comes with a computer, and right now it's just a simple microcontroller with a SIM card on it. Does the Raincube computer eventually come with a system on a chip that is hosting all of the open ledger blockchains on it?
I'm a fan of hybrid structures where you have a blockchain that has all of your really high value information, and then you have feeder systems that, like IoT is a perfect situation where you're getting way more data than you really need. At some point, some of that data has very little value, maybe even no value. You're getting a water level sensor reading, 10 times a second or something like that because of the speed of these things. You don't need all that. So you could say that there is some connector between this device and the very edge of the blockchain network, and there's some decision made about how much information actually makes it to the blockchain and gets stored there. So, and all this other information is just disposable, but useful in some senses, but not needed for the blockchain. So I would entertain something like that in almost every IoT case where you've got lots more information than you need.
Right, and then we're weather data as well, which is a huge commodity.
Yeah.
you put a humidity barometer sensor onto a Raincube, you have a mini weather station.
Right.
So, 21 Co is already, putting out software where you can be selling, weather data for Bitcoin using micropayments. So, how does Raincube and Raincoin become more developer friendly? So, like Patrick was talking about, even having a slip and slide, which, isn't contributing to the food economy per se, but it also has a value for community relations and, time spent with family, which is hard to quantify.
Right.
And what's funny about the Sacred Economics book is the author, Charles Eisenstein, basically says anytime you try to quantify something, it automatically detriments the quality. So it's almost like, well, with Raincoin, if we start to quantify the rainwater, are we somehow decreasing the quality? But I have a feeling that because we're quantifying it, the quality could increase. If you have a better relationship with your water, does that mean because right now I think the problem with solving the water crisis is that it can only be done at the top level. You're looking at water management districts, Army Corps of Engineers. These are the only people who have the ability to solve the problem. I think with Raincube and Raincoin, it offers an alternative solution where any individual can make an exponential impact by converting their roof and their lawn to rainwater harvesting and gardening. I guess the question is, do you even try to quantify those social relationships? How has Farmville done it? I think it could be a system where you have badges, or you have bonus points for hooking up a gray water system to your shower, so you get double Raincoin. But I think that's kind of the fun part about this project, is it offers so many possibilities and how to convert rainwater into something useful.
I think that's more in line with what people can understand in terms of a business and what your story is and things like that. You're about enabling people to make smarter water choices or more sustainable choices. And I almost feel like Raincoin is just an incentive program. As much as it is a big deal for anybody to say that we're launching a coin that's going to have its own economy, I wonder if your bigger story is that you're using it as a game piece to encourage people to live more sustainably. And here's all the tools that you can use to live more sustainably.
Right, because the question is, okay, well, great, you just made a computer for rainwater systems. What's to say that Rainbird or Orbitz or whatever the other big, industrial Netafim, whoever comes in and says, oh, well, we'll make our own version. Well, are you running Raincoin, or are you running, the social network, so to speak? Because I think at the end of the day, the reason why people will want to choose the Raincube platform is because that's where people already are. So one thing that kind of bothers me still is that people could cheat. Like in any money system, right,
there's a chance that people are going to try and cheat. And in this situation, you can kind of curb it. You know the weather in their area. You know it rained and how much it rained. And so they've got some room they can play with. They can still go stick their hose in it and fill it up to the max, so they get the most amount of rain coins, while it's raining outside, just to make sure, Yeah. So they could always do that, and you'll lose a little bit because of that cheating. But maybe the best defense against cheating isn't to really try and nail, did you really use it or did you not? It's just to accept that this whole idea is very altruistic. Anybody that's going to be thinking sustainably is because they care about other people, and they're already altruistically minded. So I wouldn't put too much. I wouldn't make it you can use this coin to eat. So if you're desperate and you need to eat, Raincoin's your ticket, because that's very hyperbolic. But I'm just saying, people will cheat the more value this has. That's not an altruistic value. The more hard dollars and cents value it is. So you're always going to walk that line, accept a certain amount of cheating, but try and make it to where people wear it as a badge, like you said. They don't keep it in their wallet.
And wouldn't it be possible to, like you said, tiers of badges based on certain proofs within proof of flow or proof of produce? Like if you can publish that you've certified your water quality through some external tool also, that isn't there added value in that also? And can Raincube do that, or possibly do that? You know what I mean? Or if you're growing organic produce, and so we know that this node in the IOR network is certified, non-GMO, everything is all good, so there's more value to that. You know.
Well, I think the more horizontal you keep any kind of system like this, the better off it is, because the more vertical it becomes, the more hierarchical it becomes, the more
Right.
you incentivize cheating, accumulation, competitions like that. So
the more competitive it is, the more likely you are to cheat.
yes, yeah, absolutely, because the commodity becomes worth more the higher up, the more accumulation occurs within a system, which is why I asked the intra versus intra stuff, because you want the Internet of Rain to be a global ecosystem of nodes that are connected to each other, that negotiate, help understand the water economics from local to global, using the system itself to do that. And you don't want people in there too much. You want people to participate in the system, but you don't want them to be able to guide the system, which is why you have the consensus mechanism in the first place.
Right. So maybe rainwater as, just to go back to like you said, solely just the rainwater being the value. Is it possible that, larger organizations buy emergency storage space, or rent emergency storage space, or rent the data taken from the IOR network at the standard rate, and that's the value?
Well, once again, I don't think you should commodify the water. I think you should commodify the act of storing the water as an act of sustainability. Once again, those are two different tokenization systems. Nestle Corp and Flint, Michigan, those examples, those are the results of commodifying water. You want to present the opposite argument, which is we're incentivizing sustainability through the accumulation of water that we then redistribute.
Right, and that's kind of what I meant, and in that, like, let's say I have this storage capacity of 1,000 gallons or 3,000 gallons, and I personally only use 1,000 gallons. So I have this extra 2,000 that I can essentially rent in an emergency situation. So I'm still going to collect it in case of drought, and in the event of a drought, it's there.
You'd have to figure out a platform to where, one, people are getting rated, so that if you're going to have this distributed, like some company needs to store 100,000 gallons of water, and they're just in little pockets of 500 here, 500 there, there's going to have to be some way that they can trust that capacity is stored in a distributed way, and it's going to be there. Mm-hmm. And they have a way to transport it all, so move it around. It's not to say that economy doesn't exist or that problem doesn't exist, but you would have to solve it. You'd have to make it so easy that it's easier than just the one guy that has 1 million gallons of storage space.
I wonder when we get to a point where, okay, let's say we have 10 homes on a block, and everybody knows how much water everybody else has. Is there a point where there's a smart contract that executes once home 1 gets to a certain threshold? They've just gone to, they've just emptied their tank, but home 6 has an extra tank because they've just been using less. Is there a way to have a smart contract execute so that the home with the surplus is automatically sent to the home with less supply? And would that homeowner say, hey, you're using more and I'm using less? I wonder how we could transition to a point where we have enough, so it doesn't even matter, because I guess like human emotion or human psychology is we automatically revert to scarcity, like where there's not enough, we're going to fight over that resource. So I wonder if there is a way to have this artificial intelligence executing these smart contracts that is somehow balancing that ecosystem out. So it's taking less pressure off the individual to make those decisions, or coming into decision fatigue where, we're not getting rain for the next month. Do I take a shower today? That kind of that kind of question. But then again, if you have a well that's backed up, how does that play into the game where you don't get Raincoin if you're using well water? But Florida is one of the few places that has a pretty reliable aquifer, at least for now. But if you go to Texas, they don't have that luxury.
So is some part of this is about, the whole idea is about sustainability, but is some part of this about localization or relocalizing, like trying to be more self-reliant or dependent on the people around you?
I think there's two tiers. One is the physical resources locally, right? Because if you're growing food or you're collecting rainwater, you want to keep that inside of your local watershed or environment. But if you have the software tools, you have the hardware tools, you would want to make that available globally, because a microcontroller here is going to be the same as a microcontroller over there. So I feel like the technology is open, but the exchanges are localized, if that makes sense.
It does. And so sometimes the impulse to localize goes along with like some nostalgia for the way we used to do things. And so the way we used to garden or grow food uses huge amounts of water, and a lot of it evaporates. And so you could use something that's way more technical, like hydroponics or aquaponics or something. It's going to use 7% of the water that a traditional garden is going to use, and it's in a box, so there's chances that it's more portable than a garden.
Right. So that brings up an interesting point, because if you can grow all of the leafy greens supply in a hydroponics factory, and it's using 0.1 Raincoin as opposed to like 1 Raincoin in a traditional garden, but there's certain things that you can't grow hydroponically. Like let's say you want to have an orchard or something. It'd be really hard to grow that using hydroponics. So maybe rain is a great fit for hydroponics. And what if we're able to grow enough food indoors to meet base nutritional needs? Like we're able to get like enough vitamins to everybody through whatever soylent comes out. But what if you want something exotic? What if you want to have that rare fruit? Would you pay a premium for that using Raincoin? So that's another idea that I've thought about, because I think we're going to get to a point where, sure, anybody, like, here's a salad, right? But the way human culture has evolved is we're always looking for something unique, something new. And what if we get to a point where backyard gardeners, the reason why you're buying from them is not because it's a commodity, but in fact you can only get that like specific variety of sweet potato from that person. And I think that's kind of what I think is going to be the future of farming, is hyper local, like just all different kinds of strains of different fruits and vegetables, as opposed to what we have right now, which is you get one type of carrot, one type of broccoli, one type of lettuce inside of Publix. So
I think that's the actual trend in localization is it's craftsmanship and diversity and uniqueness, as opposed to simply just encasing things in a regional area. And there's value in that, and that goes into quantifying sustainability, where it's this balance between diversity and interconnectivity. It's how, like he's saying, we can baseline cover all the needs in this very efficient mechanism, but at the end of the day, we crave diversity. And so, is it designable